What happened at your job that felt like something straight out of The Office? My father left his old job because they created the committee. They kept creating committees for things and kept having to decide who would be on them, so they created a committee whose sole purpose was to select members of other committees. I once broke wind at work and my cubicle is by the kitchen. My manager walks by my cubicle and says, what is that smell? Smells like someone's warming up their dinner from last night. I could not stop laughing in my mind after he said that. I used to work testing bloods in a biohazard hood. It's a glass chamber thingy with venting fans and gas lines for when you need to use Bunsen burners or whatever. Anyways, I tooted and it ended up being so rancid that my coworkers called security to check for gas leaks. I didn't have the heart to take the blame. I work in a large office and the president of the company rode around on a fricking Segway. I remember attending a meeting once and he segued in, stood on the fricking thing to deliver his presentation, and then segued out of the room like he was riding a gosh darn Roman chariot. We had a meeting about how we were having too many meetings. I work for a smaller non-profit. The boss sends out an email about limiting use on the color copier because we need to save money and the color tones are expensive. Fine, I only print in black and white most of the time anyway. Next day, she calls me down to help troubleshoot her wireless connection to the printer. It turns out the connection has always been fine, but what she actually needs is help formatting a document before it gets printed. The document is Harry Potter-themed birthday invites in deep scarlet and gold color scheme for her daughter's upcoming birthday party. And 2, she then proceeds to test print the invites 10 times before actually printing the 35 sheets that she really needed. This was a year ago. I'm still going out of my way to print full-color copies. HR held a seminar on diversity in the workplace. HR rep proceeded to ask what we like for Thanksgiving. We all answered things like turkey or stuffing, etc. The one black guy answers turkey as well. The HR rep then stopped the meeting, pointed at him and said, "You know, in my experience with the African American community, you all typically like macaroni." She lost her job a few days later. All true, no lies. What the actual crap? Who took Michael Scott and Toby and switched their roles? That's wild. I guess that also means that the boss was a mild-mannered, ineffectual man who's never made a sale, so everyone loses in that situation. Years ago, delivering pizza, my boss was a huge man-baby and was upset with me about something stupid. I was up for a double delivery, which was more rare than you'd think, and I'd get an extra $1 for the same trip out of the store. So to punish me, he only gave me one and gave the other to the next driver up. Well, the deliveries weren't just close, they were to the exact same place. For some reason, the customer just made 2 separate orders. Maybe to use 2 different cards, otherwise they would have just updated the order. We even told my boss as we were taking the order, but he didn't care. He had already made up his mind about this stupid punishment for me, even though you could tell he was realizing how dumb it was. So here we are, 2 delivery dudes from the same place, delivering to the same place. And the customer actually says, "Damn, I specifically asked them not to send 2 people." As though that wouldn't be totally obvious, and he's still got 2 people. Last year, on Ugly Christmas Sweater Day, coworker A didn't have a sweater to wear. Coworker B offered to loan one to her. The day of, person A arrived wearing a Christmas sweater, and B remarked to A that, having found an ugly sweater to wear, she'd no longer need to borrow one, at which point coworker A broke into tears and exclaimed, "My mom knitted this sweater for me." HR got involved. Hilarious. My boss was obviously sleeping with a coworker. He referred to his new girlfriend as his dream woman and described her exactly but wouldn't tell me her name. It was so awkwardly, painfully obvious who he was talking about, but after I easily guessed that it was her, his eyes went huge and he sat there for a moment in slack-jawed panic. Then he blurted out, "No, it's not her, I hate her." A few days later, he comes into my office and says, "Okay, listen, I know you want to know the name of my dream woman," and he invented the name Barb for her, and told me about how he's so excited that she's introducing him to her friends, and it feels like they're a real couple. Except every time he meant to say Barb, he accidentally said my coworker's name instead. Each time I corrected him, he said, "Right, not her, I mean Barb." After he told me the story about Barb, he walked out of the office with a devilish half-smile expression, like he was pretty sure he fooled me and got away with it. My boss, coming in from a walk to the Target a few stores over in the shopping center, said, "Guess what I found all the way over in the parking lot at Target?" My idiot coworker said, "Was it a rat?" "No. Was it a dead rat?" "It wasn't a rat. It was one of our shopping carts, but that part doesn't matter. Just the fact that she thought it still could have been a rat after he said no the first time and thought the clarification 'dead' would be the right guess was really funny to me. We had an equal opportunity training that tricked people into choosing a minister and his family as ideal neighbors. It was revealed that they were satanic ministers and regularly did animal sacrifices. I printed out the 12 tenets of Satanism, which states that you are to never harm animals, and filed an equal opportunity complaint against the equal opportunity training. I'm not a Satanist, just a guy who likes to cause trouble. Once during training on how to deal with people who don't want to be alive anymore, I told the leader that I was pro-choice when he asked me about self-deletion. He couldn't decide if that was a legitimate option. My boss had a dream. When she describes it, it sounded more like a nightmare, but she didn't see it that way. She described this dream of being locked in a room with only a single door. At one point, some big men in suits opened the door and without saying a word threw a gutted pig into the room and closed the door. She came to work, told us about this dream, and then asked for a few co-workers to help her Google what it meant. When they looked it up and broke down the different symbols in it, F my life, they came to the conclusion that it wasn't good. Who would have guessed, right? The boss didn't like their assessment, so she started arguing about the different ways you could interpret a dead pig being thrown at you by mafia types. The sales manager pulled a real Dwight. I guess to save money and prove that nobody would know the difference, he cancelled bottled water deliveries and started refilling them secretly with tap water. People noticed immediately, and it was stupid anyway because the company was doing well at the time. Whatever savings were irrelevant. Wow, he really shrewded that one. Way to save a couple of dimes and make everyone hate you, pal. And this guy wasn't even in charge of admin or the office at large. Who cares that much about something like that at work? Oh, right, Dwight Schrute. My co-workers and I currently are in a large office-style feud. We've broken up into teams at my company, and we're all pretty loyal to our teams and heavily differ personality-wise per team. Our office is about a month away from major renovations, desks are moving, spaces are shifting. It's a huge all-out war for desk spaces that's turned into heated arguments. We all separate and talk crap about opposing teams in meetings. It's been a lot of fun. Had a woman when I first started at my company who had all sorts of TMI problems, but my favorite was the day she accidentally crapped her pants. Instead of discreetly going to clean herself up and returning to her desk, or taking care of it on lunch, or whatever a better solution would have been, she went to the bathroom, placed her soiled undies in a bag, and casually walked out of the office, stopping by every single desk to let us know that she had had an accident and was going home to get new undies. Like she was proud of her chocolatey trophy or something. It was bizarre. She quit a week later because God told her to. In the same day, I was both commended and reprimanded for the same thing. Certificates and everything. I'd been helping out around the office with jobs that people didn't want to do, and helping cover different departments when our business was experiencing a tough year with employee illnesses. An hour after getting the certificate from the department director and CEO, my boss pulls me and says I'm not pulling my weight and need to stop being so nice to other people. I didn't even know how to respond, and he couldn't figure out how to explain what I actually did wrong. Weird day. Our bookkeeper used lol at the end of text messages to the general manager. He thought it meant lots of love, so she was let go because he thought she was coming on to him. A crazy nurse trapped a young, new employee in the nurse's station and proceeded to spend an hour driving the new employee through the nurse's hometown on Google Maps, a small boring Canadian suburb, all the while exclaiming things like, "And this is where my friend lived," and "This is where the hospital was, only 15 minutes from my house," while this new employee made help eyes at me from the office. It feels like it could have been Michael and Ryan when he was a temp. My office is preparing to let some people work from home. but they're going to require a webcam which will be used to ensure that a dress code is being followed while working from home. I found out today, and honestly it got me a little depressed. That I'm associated with people that think like this feels like some tremendous personal failing. Hippie coworker went to spend the summer out in the woods, way out west with no cell phone. I asked, what if there's an emergency? What if there's a bear? Well, that's a noble way to go out of this life. I can't figure out if he's Creed or Dwight. There's been a war over keeping our water cooler or not between our CTO and our CSR manager for over a year. As the guy who sits beside it, there's nothing more fun than listening to the CTO claim that they're supporting a small, family-run bottling company, the water comes from a major brand, and saying how the recycled jugs along with the jobs provided by us using the water support the economy. Counter-arguments are that we have a filtered water dispenser not 10 feet from the water cooler, the waste and plastics used for the jugs, the CO2 equivalent emissions from the delivery truck, among other things. Really, the CTO just likes the taste better and prefers the two temperatures, like the almost ice-cold one and the sipping hot one. The CSR manager is slowly winning by reducing the order of water we make every couple of weeks. Their banter is incredible though, and I love that we have microwavable popcorn in the office for these occasions. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I had a boss at a local TV studio that got the job because his father used to be the boss. He had 0 qualifications but acted like he could do no wrong. One time he chewed me out for losing a battery off of one of the cameras. We were standing in front of his office and I waited for him to finish his rather long-winded speech about negligence, the cost of replacing a battery, and how he'd never have let this happen if he'd been in charge of the batteries. After he finished, I pointed at the battery sitting in the middle of his desk and told him, "I think I found the battery. I've never seen a man more red-faced." Called him out. I wonder if this was followed by a Michael Scott-style immediate ending of the meeting, or this guy being way worse and having it out for you from that point on. Because if this channel has taught me anything, it's that those kinds of people do exist and are probably worse than Steve Carell's character at their jobs. When I worked a sort of telemarketing job, I sat next to this guy who didn't really seem to grasp the concept of the job at all. I'd sometimes overhear him while I was waiting for someone to pick up, and he was just a mess, tripping over his words constantly. Once I glanced over at his screen and saw how he had been on one call for over 40 minutes. I frantically nudged him and he muted it, asking what was up. I told him if he didn't ask for money soon and end the call, he might get fired, or at least reprimanded again. His response was, "Oh, but he's pretty fun to talk to. He already told me he doesn't want to donate like a long time ago." It was basically just like Michael Scott totally failing at the second telemarketing job. I worked retail and moved stores. A few months later, my female Michael Scott boss was also moved to my store. Everyone was asking me what she was like and what to expect, and all I could say was, "You just have to wait and see for yourself." Everyone was so excited to meet her on the first day. They all showed up early to greet her, and she was about 45 minutes late. Walks into the store, and the first thing she says is, "Sorry I'm late. I had to wait for my husband to get up and do my hemorrhoid cream before I left." My boss literally brought a PS4 for a white elephant exchange. Exactly as much of a disaster as that episode with the iPod. My former boss decided that since she was leaving, she'd throw a going-away party for herself. Usually, close friends or workmates will put together a nice get-together to send them off. She had managed to annoy nearly everyone she worked with at one time or another, except for the head of the organization. So she provides the list of people she wants invited, as well as the people she wanted not to attend, where and when, and decides a theme. The theme was pet speed dating. It was some sort of inside joke she'd suggested and had decided that this would be the theme. I met a few of the people besides workmates at the party. It was a few members of the public that were very active on the organization's email list and who had no real lives except to say that they were very interested in getting stuff for free. It was an odd mix of people in an uncomfortable setting at an event that was exceptionally weird to honor a person that no one really liked or felt any warmth for at all. Odd all around. Muffins are provided at staff meetings. The big kind with chocolate chips and those waxy wrappers. Sort of weird dude I work with starts eating his. Finishes, then folds the wrapper into a triangle, stuffs it in his mouth, chews and swallows. Like it's just the most natural thing in the world. I didn't believe my eyes, but then I locked eyes with someone from another department, and the look of pure confusion and shock on his face told me that he too had witnessed it. By the next meeting, a small group of non-believers were on the lookout with the two of us, and sure enough, strange coworker does it again. By the meeting after next, basically the entire staff was watching this guy eat his muffin wrapper. I'm fearful that management will notice and will stop providing muffins because at this point, no one in that room is paying attention to a damn thing they say. We all just watch the weird guy enjoy his muffin and wait to see him eat the wrapper. I really used to hate the meetings, but this has made them much more enjoyable. The big boss scheduled an optional meeting to discuss results of our work survey. No one showed up as it was a very busy time of year and we had an intense schedule. So he sat alone in the meeting room for a few minutes, came out and announced that he'd hold the meeting out in the office. Regularly stopped talking to tell people trying to work to stop and listen as this was important. The big survey result was that people felt like they didn't have enough time to get work done. No one got their work done on time that day either. I'm a UPS package handler, rest in peace me, as of 2 weeks ago, and during training we had a conversation that went like this. The training guy said, "Okay guys, here's your workbooks, please open to page 13 and put today's date. Today we're going to talk about hazmat packages. Again, page 13 and write today's date." One employee immediately asks, "What date should we write down?" My trainer literally gave the most done face and looked off into an imaginary camera. My boss started calling people hosers out of nowhere. It seems like she's doing it to be cool. She's a 60-year-old, fairly uptight lady and is pretty far from cool, and she won't stop. There was one guy saying how he wouldn't be okay with dating a bisexual girl, but would be okay with dating a lesbian. So then we asked him, why would a lesbian be attracted to you? There was me and one other guy questioning him, but he just didn't understand. Yep, that's a Kevin level of IQ right there. The more of these stories that I read, the more certain I am that The Office is not the loopy, cartoonish depiction of office life that I kind of thought it was. I mean, sure, it had real-ish moments, but I kind of thought the rest had no basis in reality. Perhaps I was wrong. A former coworker of mine would commute to work via bicycle every day. He kept a pair of comfortable work shoes at work and wore cycling-specific shoes when on the bike. He bragged about his work shoes pretty regularly, always talking about how they were very well constructed and only became more comfortable with age. One day after he left work, I took one of his insoles out of his work shoes and traced the shape onto a piece of paper. I then cut out a large number of insole-shaped pieces of paper. From that point on, whenever he left work, I'd grab a couple of paper insoles, draw offensive cartoons on them, date them, and place them underneath each of his actual insoles. Most of the cartoons involved at least one male reproductive organ. Gradually, his shoes became tighter and tighter. He actually complained about it to me and various other co-workers and talked about having to buy a new pair. Approximately 5 weeks later, a very loud, "What the frick?" could be heard from the back rooms. Everyone walked back to see what the commotion was all about. There he was, paging through each individual insole in total offended disbelief that someone had been messing with him so consistently for such a long time. To this day, it was the most satisfying work prank I've had the pleasure of conducting. During a major presentation, an odd noise started coming in from the speakers. It seemed like one of the people who called in left his mic on. At first I thought he was shifting his chair, but as the noises became more rhythmic and frequent and louder, it was clear the dude was snoring. There were at least 50 people in attendance for this presentation who got to listen to this. I worked at a large chain retailer as a front-of-store supervisor. One day, one of my cashiers clocks in, comes to me and says, "So, my last day was last week, but I'm still on the schedule." Sure enough, there she was. "Shoot, well, did he give out your 2 weeks? It's slow. Go to HR and figure this out." "No, I mean, I was let go last week. I was fired, but they scheduled me." Okay, do you still want to talk to HR? As long as I'm getting paid. I like this job. I'll just have fun today. What are they gonna do, fire me?" That was the day I found out the true limits of the point of sales staff discount button. A guy being called into HR because he continually had his pants around his ankles at the urinal. Everyone would talk about it for weeks, and then finally, someone reported it. I was a legal intern this summer for a mid-size city. My desk was situated in front of a bulletin board with job postings for the city, and when a posting needed to go up, I'd put it up since it was closest to my desk. One day, the office manager gives me one to hang up, and I do so. A few hours later, she approaches me with another posting and says it's the same one, but there's an error on the old one, so hang the new one up. She goes back to her desk with the old one and goes, "Oh my God." She comes back over to point out that in the requirements for the job section, someone put, "must be able to handle snarky comments from strangers who don't know you at all, but enter the lobby with an attitude just because you represent government." So she shows my boss this, who was the city lawyer, and she has a fit. She called HR, and the head of HR came down to our office and they held a meeting about it. So I've spent a ton of time at this job goofing around, and by this point I know the city website pretty well. I know the city also posted job openings online, which the public can see. So I went to the city's job page, and sure enough, the posting was there, comment and all. At this point, I'm dying because I think it's funny. So I go into my boss's office and let them know it's on the city website. The HR boss freaks out and tells me to call IT and have them get rid of it. It was a fun day. I'm a Starbucks barista, and I was on the drive-thru for our usual after-school rush. So my shift supervisor was in charge of getting all the food orders together at the time, and someone at the window ordered a cookie. Me, trying to get the line moving and not bothering to make sure, took the pastry bag she handed me with the cookie sticker on it and gave it out to the lady at the window, and she drove off. 5 minutes later, the same lady pulls up to the speaker and says, "Hey, I just came through and ordered a chocolate chip cookie, but I got a bag with 2 strips of bacon in it." For clarification, we don't even serve straight-up bacon. My shift supervisor had taken some bacon from one of the sandwiches and warmed it up for herself, and then switched it with a cookie somehow. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.